Shout out to Satoshi's Ball by JarsLearnCrypto.com in Ottawa, December 15th. Monarch token of Monarch Wallet, Stroken Tokens.com, Bitcoin Energy, and Bitbacker.io. Shout out to Satoshi's Ball by JarsLearnCrypto.com in Ottawa, December 15th. Monarch token of Monarch Wallet, Stroken Tokens.com, Bitcoin Energy, and Bitbacker.io. Hey, how goes it? Ken Bozak here to talk about Bitcoin and Bitcoin accessories. And today I'm here with my bro Seth Arstrada from MineYour.Biz. How goes it, bro?
It's going great, man. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate you scheduling me. I'm happy that tweet that I posted out got so much love, and you know, this has been a really cool social experiment, like streaming with strangers kind of thing I'm doing here. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience, let them know who you are, maybe a little bit about how you got into the space and what you're currently doing in the industry.
Sure. Yeah. So, like you said, my name is Seth Estrada. I run a community that's very much geared towards proof of work mining called MineYour.Biz. And of course, we have the domain MineYour.Biz, so that it's perfectly vertically integrated brand as far as the community and as far as what we do. And I work as a consultant, sometimes for blockchain integration for traditional businesses, but more frequently for mining operations, sort of small to mid-scale, and then also mid-scale to large-scale capital interests that want to do mining as their means of entry into the market. And yeah, that's kind of parlayed my experience as a Fortune 50 corporate trainer from Microsoft, and prior to that Google, prior to that Samsung Telecom USA, AT&T, and Dell. Parlayed that into this consulting gig that I do now. I'm actually on site at a client location right now. They were cool enough to let me just hop onto Wi-Fi here because we were so crunched for time today. So.
Oh man, well tell them I appreciate them diversifying your time with me or whatever. But I was wondering, like, let's just dive into it. And obviously you're there with the clients. What's that conversation like when somebody's interested in mining Bitcoin? Like, what's kind of like that elevator pitch to what is mining Bitcoin and how do I make money doing it?
Oh my gosh. Well, the elevator pitch, I'm glad you asked because it's so different depending on who the client is, right? I mean, it's like any other kind of consulting. You really have to profile very well and build a customer avatar that reflects the real world. So case in point, let's say that, I actually, what I saw on Twitter, are you starting to mine? Was it? I'm like so bad right now.
I'm experimenting with the mining program. I'm using something right now. I'm experimenting with. I was doing a Genesis mining experiment previously, but during that bull run and everything and the hashing problems that we were having, it became all unprofitable. So they killed all my contracts anyway. So I was like, oh well. That worked, but I did the bare minimum. So I'm going to do something a little bit different this time. Obviously, the bare minimum. And even compounding that is not something that really works out, especially during like times that we were in. But yeah, I'm starting to look back into it because with the market going bearish, I've learned that I probably should have hedged my portfolio a little bit better and diversified into mining as well as hodling. And I have like things like, you know, Masternode. I'm staking some coins. I have Decred tickets. I earned from some of my crypto, but I didn't hedge against the bear market, which I should have been doing, and I didn't realize that's kind of what mining is. It's having some skin in the game. It may not be as profitable as putting that money into Bitcoin if it does have a bull run, but you'll still be earning, and that's good enough, man. You're like, I've learned to not be too greedy.
Awesome. So I mean, right now you just summarized what the elevator pitch would be for you as a customer avatar. I want to say it's Crypto Christopher Walken that's kind of giving you a little bit of guidance on your upcoming mining adventures, right? Like moving back towards mining, not cloud hash, but actually running some mining gear yourself.
Right.
Is that okay? So I think I've been following the breadcrumbs there.
Yeah,
on,
I got
on
some
crypto
free
Twitter.
electricity here, man. It's crazy. I've never really tapped into it, but I don't want to stir the pot. You know, like my landlord looking into my electricity booming. And then I invested in all this equipment, and my electricity is now something I didn't put into the equation. You know.
Right. I've had some previous landlords say like, "Hey, we're about to throw a watt meter on your entire office circuit because we've noticed some interesting patterns, Mr. Estrada." So just prepare yourself.
What's like the ins and outs sort of look like financially? Like what's something like kind of startup costs look for a small mining operation? If somebody was watching this and they're interested and they really want to get into this mining thing, like what's sort of like their bare minimum investment that you would sort of start with, and maybe what's more of like the more institutional side, like you were saying, like the bigger pools that you work with?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked, Ken. So I think that when you're looking at somebody who's just getting into mining, very first time, and I apologize if there's a little bit of background conversation. None of it's sensitive, so we're in a common area that is typically used for conferencing. But as far as somebody who's just getting into mining and just asking themselves, where's the upside for me? Like where maybe you're a little more risk averse. So not you specifically, but like you're saying, somebody just getting in and saying,
right,
maybe I've got free power at work, or maybe I've got cheap power at home. Maybe I live in one of those markets where, unicorn markets, like areas of Canada where you're
just
right
so
next to a
happened to
hydroelectric.
get electricity, solar panels set up when, they were giving people the rebates.
Oh, yeah.
There's a couple people I run into like that. They're like, I actually am sitting on a pretty interesting scenario. I got these solar panels a couple years ago, and I heard about this mining thing. What's up?
So that's perfect. Let's start with that sort of customer avatar there. Somebody that's got either cheap or free power, and they've got maybe not tons, right, megawatts or gigawatts worth of power, which is kind of a unicorn story, right? Very few people actually have those kinds of resources. But they've got maybe 5 to 10 to 15 kilowatts, which is typical power consumption for the average North American home. Around 5 kilowatts, maybe a little higher if you overbuild. I have friends who like to run home theaters or whatever and multiple gaming rigs, so they kind of already plan for that. It's very similar power consumption to what you might use at peak when mining, but they just do it every now and then. So let's just say that you've got that kind of infrastructure, a few kilowatts, maybe 10 or more kilowatts. You're going to have to start thinking about how much your electricity, how much you are consuming in either kilowatts or amps. And it's kind of a shift for a lot of people. You normally think, well, okay, I'm looking at the power supply for whatever, my MacBook, and it says it consumes like 65 watts. Yeah. How does that relate to mining? It might be a little bit outside of most people's experience. I mean, very few of us are certified electricians, so it's kind of Greek moving into this space. But you're going to have to start thinking about what's the draw that this equipment is going to, most immediately, that it's going to take from the wall. Am I going to burn out this plug by plugging in a miner? Because that can happen. You can do that when you're just getting started and getting a couple of mining rigs going in an office or at home. So I'd say that's the first thing to consider is, do I even have the infrastructure to literally plug this thing into the wall and not burn my house down?
Right, yeah, because you leave it running all day. You don't want to leave the office and it starts an electrical fire. They're pretty much the worst fires.
And it happens. I'm telling you, it happens every day when people say like, all right, well, I got, whatever. I'm up 20K. Well,
do you help people go through that process to kind of make sure they have the proper infrastructure?
Well, if they ask, yeah, that's what our community does, the MineYour.Biz community, and we're very open. Like, is it always me? No, but our community is, in my opinion, one of the best at just answering questions like that very frankly. No nonsense. You're not going to get like balled out for having a sort of new question.
Right.
People just ask because they have questions. So our mantra is we want people to be the mentor that they wish they had. So and keep paying it forward.
Yeah, so, exactly. I'm with you, and I wish more people would do that instead of have that tribal mentality of like a high schooler. Oh, you don't know that? Like, dude, people don't know what private key means. Like, stop assuming they understand. I get it.
Right.
It has the word private in it. Key, you assume that they would keep it to themselves. Sometimes they tweet it out and they don't know better. It's the same thing when people post a picture of a selfie with their new Visa card and they didn't block the numbers. Like, people do dumb things. Like, don't assume. We have to be here to help one another.
Right, exactly. And just because somebody maybe has made a mistake like that, it doesn't mean that they're not fully capable on the other, 359 facets that need to be covered. There's a lot. I mean, you have to cover a lot of angles, right? So you can't get angry at people because they're not like 360-degree geniuses.
Right.
And that's the problem with blockchain and crypto in general, as it is right now, end of 2018, is that it pays to be sort of like a deep generalist, right? Where like all this stuff and you're pretty good at all this stuff. Whether or not you're really good at any one thing almost doesn't matter in crypto as long as you know quite a bit about a lot of things.
Right.
And so, but it's not realistic to expect that beginners are going to just jump in and be that 360-degree, generalist with a couple of deep areas of expertise.
So for the costs, it starts with having a large amount of electricity already being provided to your location, whether it be office, home, otherwise. So besides already having a large amount of electricity already being provided in a way to, you know, safely consume it from an outlet without starting electrical fires, what's like the rigs going for nowadays? It looks like on mainstream media, crypto Twitter, you couldn't find a crypto miner cheaper now. There's like people throwing them away and recycling them for their weight in metals. It's all FUD, but you know, what are like these miners going for nowadays?
No, you're not wrong. That's the thing. So, I mean, what we're seeing for every sort of level of capital interest with regards to mining is that people are absolutely, what we've been characterizing it as is silicon blood in the streets, right? And so, like, you know, the famous quote, "We see blood in the streets, we're gonna buy it," right? That's what we're doing in the mining space. We're looking for where everybody else is bleeding out and where other larger mining interests are just folded. Pretty much, you're going to buy the means of production at the lowest possible cost. So if you're looking at mining now, there's never been a better time. You see somebody else folding, and it's a bummer, right? I mean, but their loss is your gain.
That's true. No, it is, and you know, that's what happens when miners, you know, get out of the game. It may be one big miner that may move out, but multiple smaller individual miners move in. Hash power wars kick in again. I mean, I love that that's something that's been a topic of discussion. Did you want to tap into that? I know that we're dealing with what is it? Bitcoin Cash ABC and Bcash SV, and oh my goodness, dude, it's just
right. That's a bit of a mess.
So what are people mining? Are people mining Bitcoin more, or these other ones that share the same, you know, hash algorithms, SHA-256?
Yeah, no, so yeah, I think that's a great place to start, is talking about coins and algorithms. And right now, the means of production for creating the SHA-256 hash, which is for Bitcoin Cash, like you mentioned, and a few other altcoins that share it, it is an extremely competitive space. And if you're just getting started, like you said before, you already know you have a significant amount of power at your office or maybe at a warehouse that you already have access to. Unless you know that you've got multiple megawatts of power, I would urge caution. Do not start down that track because it's so fiercely competitive. It'd be very easy to overbuy or overspend on the capex for those machines, and then find that regardless of how good your OpEx is, regardless of how good your power costs are, that your time to break even, your break even point, is so distant that you painted yourself into a corner, basically. So it's a really tricky game there. Look at the altcoin market. Look at the mid cap all the way down to some of the micro cap coins that you can flip on your own reliably.
Right, and that's like you're mining them to flip them for Bitcoin in the end, instead of mining Bitcoin to begin with. Exactly.
Or if you're particularly risk averse, then fine, park it in USDC or something. I don't know, but like or Tether. It might be a bit risky, but
USDC has better returns. Sometimes that thing pumps for a stable coin.
Oh yeah, that and True USD. Yeah. I think I've seen it as high as like $1.10, which is cool.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, 10% on a stable coin. I mean, that's better than a bank, that's for sure.
Right. So I would say to anybody that's just beginning and maybe just running a little mining operation for themselves, you need to be thinking that way. You got to be able to, you got to be willing to put in the mental work to just say, I'm going to be mining, and then I'm going to be either flipping coins, or I'm going and not just mining and dumping, but strategically, I'm going to be doing things with these coins. I can't just mine and hodl. I can't do that.
You have to learn how to trade. That's really important. I'm not trying to incentivize people to trade. That's a fast way to lose money. But learn how to. You know what I mean? Like, learn exactly how the trading experience works, so you can apply that to what you're doing as far as mining, holding, and maybe moving around some cryptos. Not doing like day trading or 10x leverage. You don't have to do anything crazy, but you do want to know how that works, so you can at least apply that, like like at a chessboard. You can kind of think of 3 moves ahead if you know how the other pieces move around on the table.
Absolutely, and yeah, getting into mining, it's like you said before, a brilliant way of framing that is a hedge. It's just another tool in that toolkit.
I've learned that over the years, man. It was a slow lesson I've learned because I got in luckily right at the run of the bull run, right? I was like, oh, why would I put money into a mining machine when I could put money right into the asset and get a higher return? And it's like risk reward, you idiot. You know, I wasn't thinking. I was high on hopium, and now I've kind of come to learn to diversify, hedge, and have multiple skins in the same game as a miner, as a hodler, as a trader. All these things that I can do and participate, I should, and I'm definitely getting into that.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's brilliant. And you know what's funny is that I would have agreed with you too. At a certain point last year, I would have advised anybody who was initially looking at mining, I would have said, no, just buy coin. With the same CapEx, I think that you're thinking you were not wrong. And that whole saga of the bull run, that validates your thought process, right? Your approach to it. You were totally right. And yet at the same time, there were certain checkpoints at which you could have strategically cashed out and then reinvested in infrastructure to ensure that you could continue operations hedged from multiple sides, like you're saying now. But hindsight's 2020, right? There were guys that went all in on mining, and they were like, "Oh crap! I could have diversified early on, and I could have gone just mining with this much, and then I could have just bought coin like you did." Yeah, everyone's saying the same thing.
Now is a good time to get into mining because of the price of the miners. I mean, they're not dirt cheap, but they're a lot cheaper than they were during that time. Everybody was snatching them up left and right. So I mean, now I could get my hands on it relatively, less, and it's kind of come down sort of with the price of Bitcoin. So that's kind of cool. And I can mine my coin back and kind of have that. I don't know. I'm definitely more interested in mining now than I used to be. And I kind of, because I want that ability to have more say. Like I want to run a full node. I haven't had the ability. I've been traveling all year. I went to like 40 friggin' conferences, so I haven't had the chance to really set one up. But I'm going to set up my own full node. I want to have like a lightning channel that I can open with like my viewers and my friends, and where we can kind of move money around in our own network. And like I want to be able to participate more in this, and to do so, I think like it really does start with like having a say in the mining game.
Totally agreed. Totally agreed. And I call mining the crypto gateway drug because, frankly, if you understand cryptocurrencies and blockchain from the miner's perspective, you can very easily, like you were saying before, start to expose more sides of your life, take off more clothes to get more skin in the game, more sides of yourself into the game. And but miners are typically uniquely positioned to just say like, all right, well, I see what the coin I've mined is doing in the market, and I see that there's a need to perhaps change algorithms or coins or pools or exchanges, etc., because I'm not going to be able to cover my own OPEX if I don't.
Why don't we cover the basics real quick before we dive too deep into mining? We didn't really, I feel like we didn't explain what mining does or is, what role it plays. Maybe you could explain to the viewers the role that mining plays in the Bitcoin economy or ecosystem, so to speak, and how it is something that is, earnable, by doing what mining does.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. And I apologize I don't have a whiteboard. I feel a little unprepared, but because this is, again, it's what I do for a living is I do the education piece with clients.
Well, yeah, you have your own channel and stuff. We'll make sure people check you out.
Okay, well, appreciate that. Sometimes, frankly, my channel is sometimes a little bit. We don't really speak to the remedial blockchain enthusiast, somebody who's just getting in. We're not as good at that on the channel as we are in the community. Our community is quite good at that. Gotcha. But to your point, blockchain and mining. Blockchain needs mining largely because the way that consensus is achieved in blockchain, as previous hashes are rolled into the next block, if you're familiar with what the blockchain conceptually is somewhat, every time that a hash is brought into the next block, there is a need for consensus on what will go into that block, what will be included in that block. And proof of work is the mechanism for that consensus. That work is mining. Of finding a cryptographic hash from all the other information that needs to be sifted through, essentially, to find the right hash, and that's distributed into what are called shares, and those are sent out to each individual miner. And there's always work for any new miner that jumps onto the network. That's a great thing about it. Barrier to entry is none. Because it's a distributed trustless system, anybody with a miner can jump onto the network or a pool, and a share is distributed to them for their miner to try to find that correct hash. And as they contribute to either pools or to a network in finding that hash to create the next block, a portion of the reward from that block is paid to them in that native coin. So like you said before with SHA-256, if you're mining Bitcoin, you're contributing to creating consensus for the next block in Bitcoin, then you'll receive a portion of the block rewards for Bitcoin in the Bitcoin currency. And then that works for every other currency out there, every other coin out there.
Unless you're staking, unless you're not a proof of work coin. But otherwise, that's how proof of work coins work, and that's the role mining plays. And that's why it is profitable, because the miners are rewarded for verifying transactions and securing the network and basically being the validators of the network without being any central authority behind it. It is decentralized. Like you said, anybody can participate in this and equally get a share of the amount of power you're putting behind the mining all in together. You know, if you have a larger mining facility, you're contributing more, you're probably going to earn more. Smaller miners don't earn as much, but it's still, you have a role to play. You know, anybody can set up. I have one of these awesome little miners somewhere laying around, and it's just a USB one. You just plug it in. It's from FutureBit, and it's a Litecoin miner, and you just plug it into a USB outlet on your wall. You connect it to the Wi-Fi, and you connect an address to it, and it just pays out. You know,
nice.
It's awesome, and it's a little way to get into it. And I actually have a video in the making on it, because I think it's an interesting way to, you know, kind of learn how to do it in a very small USB plug-and-play Raspberry Pi kind of way. But it's that, you know, snowball effect that, you know, hopefully people would, this is that little bit that they are missing to give them the comfort to kind of dip their toe more financially in the mining game. You know, you start with like a $75 miner that you just plug and play and learn and, you know, kind of see how it pays out. And you're like, oh, this is it. And you move on to the larger ones. How do you go about getting, you know, that snowball effect rolling? Do you, with clients, do you kind of see like, is that like kind of the way to go?
Well, generally speaking, with a lot of the clients that I work with, they're already of that mindset that we're in this to create a business, and they've got proper business plans drawn up. They have hedging instruments in place and insurance, et cetera, and they're looking at like either we've got a capital interest of a few million to maybe 10 million or more, and so they're very used to thinking about this in much more calculated terms than most of us would be at home, right? When we're just approaching blockchain and asking ourselves, how could I get involved in mining? But what I would say to anybody who's just starting, you might even start even simpler than a USB stick. What you might do is you might just look at the laptop or the desktop that you're already using and mine with that.
Oh, so, interesting, yeah.
Because we were talking before, discussing that you're on a Mac, right?
Yep.
Okay, is it like an iMac, desktop, laptop?
Oh, yeah, it's the big old iMac over here.
Nice. Well, it actually has some pretty hefty specs as far as desktops go. It's pretty capable. I mean, it can edit video, it can render
that's what I use it for,
3D and stuff. So if it can render video, I'll say this, if it can edit video and if it can encode video or if it can render 3D graphics, it's probably good enough to mine. And probably even better than the USB stick, you've already got it plugged into the wall and you already know it's not going to burn up that outlet. It's just not rated to do that.
All right,
so
cool.
Yeah, I would say that's probably one of the best ways just to dip your toe in the water. And then with desktop components like a laptop or a desktop that you're working with, there are only so many coins that you can mine and only so many algorithms that are optimized to run on that hardware. So that's a really great way to dip your toe in the water. I'll throw out the name of one that pretty much everybody should be familiar with, Monero.
Yes.
You can mine Monero.
I could. You're right. You're right.
And the returns are tiny, right? But with a machine like yours, even if it's only a few cents a day, what if it gives you a quarter a day? That's a gumball's worth of Monero every day for free.
I don't want to be the Debbie Downer over here, but I love being the devil's advocate, but this is actually my perspective on that. So I'm not just saying it to be the adverse conversation to this, but honestly, the life expectancy that it takes off the computer, right? Like keeping it running and constantly mining my iMac's life expectancy would go down drastically by being, you know, heated constantly, being running constantly, instead of, you know, turning it off and just turning it back on or letting it rest. Constantly mining on the iMac, it's not made for mining. So to me, the cost that it would be to replace this faster than the life expectancy that it would originally be may not, it's just another thing that I have to take into effect with my profits from using it as a miner. I know it's way too many, like, you know, rabbit holes I fell down there, but like that is something that I have to realistically look at, is the life expectancy toll that it does take.
You're totally right. And I appreciate that you gave some counterpoint. Let me push back on that just a little bit. Here's what I'm going to say. So you have Apple computers that has to deal with the FCC. They have to assert to the FCC that your computer is going to run on in most reasonable circumstances. What if you lived in Phoenix, Arizona, where it's literally 120 degrees if you're not in the shade?
Okay, you're
What
right.
if you lived? What if you were deployed to Iraq, where it's 120 degrees in the shade? And what if you had to live under these circumstances and you had to operate every single day under extreme heat? Because that's really the thing that destroys technology is extreme heat. Well, guess what? Apple has already had to go through the R&D and the testing and assert to the FCC as well as Underwriters Labs that they're not going to burn up your house at the wall, at the outlet, and that the machine itself is not going to catch on fire and blow up in your face. So, or cause any kind of a serious problem. Mining is, yes, there's a consideration there, but the heat that it generates is not outside of the spec from what Apple, in your case, has already had to assert to the FCC it's worthy of doing. So on the one hand, yes, but trust me, I work with clients that deploy thousands or tens of thousands of little PC components into their mines, and occasionally, yes, it will invalidate a warranty if, say, for example, the GPU card manufacturer just says they come up with their own policy and say, hey, if we find out you've been mining on this, then we won't honor your warranty.
Right.
However, it doesn't fail at the rate that most people would expect from mining,
Right.
even GPUs.
Yeah, I actually feel like Microsoft did that with their Xbox or something. They had a thing that said if you were mining on your Xbox or something, that they wouldn't validate if it had any issues. And then they, did something. And PlayStation, people were mining on their consoles though back in the day. I remember that. And there was a big thing, and it was in the news. That was back when anybody said the word Bitcoin in regular media, everybody went apeshit, and it was like, oh my God, they said Bitcoin. And now we have billboards in New York City thanks to Consensus, and it's kind of come almost ubiquitous in a way. Like, we don't have mainstream adoption, but we definitely have the mainstream's attention. The next is kind of on-ramping them with stuff like this, like the education process of like what these components are to Bitcoin, the mining, the transactions, the exchanges, how this all plays roles in it, and it creates its own decentralized, economy for currency, that we don't need any central points of anything. We don't need anybody's permission, and
Right.
Mining is a really cool thing, like, because you can earn these coins, and they're kind of like virgin coins, you know what I mean? Like, they have more value than a lot of the coins that are on the exchanges on the open market to different people for different reasons. You have people that want these coins.
It's a very diplomatic way of putting that, for different reasons. Yeah.
I mean, I could go to the artistic route and say people like in the art world want purity, so they would want like these pure coins maybe stored in their art, and it would be locked behind some painting. You'd have to destroy the painting to get to this pure crypto that hasn't been touched before, or for any other reason. I have Satoris, collectibles. People just like, I like knowing that it hasn't really moved around, because we've seen things like blacklisted addresses become a problem down the line. Like, if you owed me crypto and you say, Ken, what's your Bitcoin address, and I just give you my Coinbase receiving address, and you didn't really know or care, we're not really that close, and you sent me some Bitcoin from a gambling website that was one of your payouts, Coinbase is going to freeze my account now because it was a blacklisted address. But like, people like knowing the purity of their crypto now.
Right, and to your point, there's a very large OTC market, over-the-counter trades. That
the mainstream media just found out about.
Oh yeah, no, that's been. I mean, that's all that there was in crypto in the early days. That's all there was. Like, there were no exchanges. So like, everything was OTC, and now moving into this space where, like, if the original intent was to be sort of censorship resistant and to sort of have a focus on privacy, then of course you're still going to be a fan of just trading directly with a buyer. So
the coins that miners mine are actually worth more than the coins on the open market, is kind of what I'm getting to, depending on who your buyers are. There is a way to make more profit as a miner than most other ways.
Yeah, totally agreed. What I will say about certain coins, though, like we mentioned, Monero, for example, there are certain coins that are private by default, in which case there's no way of proving the coin history, and you can create unique addresses to send from. You can even do that with Bitcoin, of course, create a unique address to send from, and you can. There are ways for you to either bounce or rinse your coins so that becomes less of a problem. But even still, the DEA, they're still bullish on busting Bitcoin users. I'll put it that way. So is the FBI, and they're pretty well invested in mapping the BTC. network.
So what's the regulations look like in mining? Oh, wait, quick, I'm sorry, I just saw I got a super chat here from somebody. Let me get that name. So sorry, guys. Oh, Crypto Spocket. Thank you so much, bro, Sprocket, for the 420 super chat. Said, thanks for this video. Thanks for the super chat. I really appreciate it. And then somebody gave me a Bitcoin super chat tip over here at bitbacker.io. I got a $5 Bitcoin tip. Says, how goes it? Let's mine. So yeah, I want to mine, man. So like, what are some of the coins right now that are most profitable to mine besides like Bitcoin? That are some that you can mine to then get Bitcoin with, or like you said, do other things, whatever it may be. But like for me, at the end of the day, it's always how can I get more Bitcoin? So like, what coins right now are more profitable to mine? You know, based on the power consumption and everything, and the reward stuff like that.
Yeah, what I would say is that with consumer end equipment, so not buying a new fancy ASIC that you're not sure whether like when it's going to be delivered or how profitable it'll be when it gets to you and how long it'll last, but just using consumer gear like CPUs and graphics cards, I would say a couple of the coins that are worth looking at is BitTube is kind of high on the list.
I love you, bro. Loving this guy. Nah, dude, that's awesome. I didn't know how cool they were to mine, but I know that they have it right there on their website, how to mine. It's really easy. So thanks for bringing that up, dude. Teach us about that. What's that like? How does it mine? How can I just use my computer for BitTube?
Okay, first off, I've got to do a disclosure statement. My coverage of WCC was sponsored in part by BitTube, so they were a partial sponsor. They paid for some of my accommodations while I was there in town in Las Vegas. So lest anybody's like, hey, wait a second, Seth, I thought you've done some exclusives for BitTube before. I have.
Yeah, you made your exclusive content at World CryptoCon on BitTube, which I thought was freaking genius, by the way. And I was happy somebody did it, because all these friggin', influencers, YouTubers, content creators are out here promoting decentralization, censorship resistance, and they're using YouTube directly. I'm using YouTube, BitTube, DLive, DTube, all these other things, but like, you have to support what you're talking about. And with BitTube, it is putting your money where your mouth is and your content behind it as well. So just straight up respect for working with them, and respect to them for working with you, because that was freaking cool. So like, thanks, how's that mining process work for BitTube?
So it's very similar to mining Monero, actually. You'd use some of the same desktop mining software for mining Monero and BitTube. One recommendation that I would make to anybody who's looking at it is get comfortable with XMR Stack. It's spelled XMR STAK. It's written by a guy, FireIce, based in the UK, and written by a programmer named FireIce. He's got his own coin project as well, which I think is great. However, just keeping the main thing, you can mine BitTube with that. There is a developer fee attached with it, but he's made the software pretty easy to use, and it gets really good results. So I think he's definitely paid the dues to be to deserve a developer fee, and it's like only 2%. I believe in paying developers personally, because otherwise we don't get nice things.
Well, they're the taxes I do believe in. When you say taxation is theft, it's like, no, network taxes, transaction fees, developer fees, mining fees. These are the taxes that I can get behind. These
right, and we can negotiate those
optional.
too.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. They're optional. They're negotiable.
Yeah. There's and it's represented, right? No taxation without representation. It's a core value of North Americans. We should all be standing behind it, and we should resist tyranny, voting with our actions. So, I totally agreed. And with XMR Stack, though, I'd say start there. There are other versions you can put in the homework to find something that maybe doesn't have a developer fee, or if you can go through the config files to disable the developer fee, you're welcome to do that. I would recommend just throw the guy a bone. He's put in a lot of hard work. So, and it's a good software title. But XMR Stack is a great way to mine BitTube either on the desktop with a CPU, or if you have multiple GPUs lying around, you can mine with multiple GPUs. Cool. That said, probably easiest to use it if with multiple GPUs if you're on Windows or if you're on Linux. You can use it with macOS, that's fine, and you'll get really good results. But BitTube it's as simple to mine as Monero is.
And it's securing the network for the content that's on it. So the transactions aren't really so much like currency transactions peer-to-peer. It's the rendering and the storing of the videos, right?
Well, actually, they've got an interesting model there. They have a native currency, like you were saying, that is used to tip other content creators on their network. Now, people who follow my channel know I'm not really big into porn. That's not my thing, not my scene. But there's clearly a market for it, obviously. and they have the subdomain xxx.bit.tube. And so live performers or anybody that has content there can be tipped in their native currency.
That
so
is awesome.
The tube coin itself is the native currency. And when you secure the network, you're doing two things. You're securing those transactions that go from content creator or watcher to content creator across their network. And you're also creating a block reward that goes to the content creator natively just for uploading native content to BitTube. So there is sort of they have a model that they call airtime, so that anybody who's uploading their content based on the number of views and the total minutes watched, they're given, it's a very small portion of the block reward, but a lot like miners, because they add value to the whole ecosystem, they're given a block reward a lot like miners.
That's awesome that they're putting that in there. It's a great way to start building up the attention economy. You know, to incentivize people to not just create content, but also consume content to earn cryptocurrencies as well. You know, because your content creator could tip you for having a great comment in the comment section to incentivize more engagement with the community. You know, how people, you know, are super chat tipping to get interactions and stuff like that. It's the same thing, except unfortunately for me, that 420 super chat that Crypto Sprocket sent me, YouTube stole 30% before I ever see it. Unlike the anonymous power chat that I got for $5, I got the $5 except for a very small amount that either the transactor sent or I may have to cover of the transaction fee on that. But that's the miners that are taking that instead of YouTube. You know,
yeah, 30% is pretty steep. I mean, yeah. If Visa or MasterCard said, hey, blanket policy, we're going from, you know, for merchant processing, we're moving up to 30%, dude, the world would be on fire. There would be riots everywhere.
Oh, I mean, still 3 to 5% is almost hard for small businesses to compensate. And it's hard when you have to take into consideration you have to pay money to accept money. It's weird.
But I mean, like you said, it's not completely unwarranted. It's a bit like a transaction fee. I'm not gonna, you know, I'm not gonna.
High, dude. I mean, they got a monopoly on it. That's why they can do the 3 to 5%.
Agreed. They need competitors. They need competition in the space, which is why blockchain came to answer that. A brother of mine, he jokes that Satoshi, that the identity of Satoshi is that Satoshi is actually a sentient AI that was born out of the internet's like collective cries against these big monopolies, and so Satoshi was born to say like, screw the establishment.
I can see it. It's like one of those chat bots on Twitter getting released into the wild and seeing, you know, what happens. Except it's way more powerful.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
So what are your thoughts on proof of stake versus proof of work? Because that's a lot of the mainstream media's attention right now is kind of on the power consumption of mining, that, you know, it could become unbearable toll on the overall, you know, electric distribution. We could see issues where it becomes unsustainable or unprofitable, where proof of work is destined for failure and proof of stake is the only thing that'll be environmentally cost effective. Kind of what's your perspective on that? Do you see, you know, proof of stake being superior or proof of work, you know, potentially being something that can consume more power than it can create in currency? Because right now we're seeing one Bitcoin isn't worth as much as it is to create one Bitcoin on average right now. I think that it was around $5,000 some $100 on average to create a Bitcoin, when Bitcoin on average is selling for a little under $4,000 right now. So like,
sure.
Where do you see this long term going? Is that something that you're looking into?
Yep, absolutely, and that's kind of what separates the small to mid-scale operations in mining from the large-scale operations in mining. Recently, some of the SHA-256 network for mining Bitcoin Cash, there was a noticeable decrease in the hash rate because about 200,000 miners were taken offline. Now, that's a question of markets that they live in. Yeah, it's a bummer for them, but again, their loss is your gain. Their loss is my gain. Their loss is the gain of anybody else that has some kind of a competitive advantage to come in and pick up the torch. So it really depends on markets. You could literally live, or you could live literally next to a hydroelectric dam and be buying substation rate power or buying excess power, right, surplus power at below cost, because that particular utility is saying, well, we've got more power than we can distribute into our grid. We're generating all this power, and at least for these hours of the day, we've got power that's at like 0.01 cents per kilowatt hour. that can happen. That's literally something that can happen.
Yeah. Quebec and New York, I think, do it with Niagara Falls power.
Yeah, so these things happen. I mean, they're kind of unicorns. You can't do it from the flyover states, but it is something that does happen in the real world. So when people start saying, especially when it's mainstream media, man, you got to step back and think, okay, what's really going on? What is the other hand doing here? Because the mainstream media loves to feed us stories that they want us to think about. So I contend that proof of work has a really good long run ahead of it. Not forever. They're right. Nothing lasts forever. Everything has entropy. Every system has entropy. Nothing is perfectly sustainable indefinitely. Not even galaxies and the universe as we know it is perfectly sustainable. But we got a really good long run ahead of proof of work before proof of stake absolutely has to happen. So right now, when you're just looking at like, okay, well, this is no longer profitable. Well, it's probably just no longer profitable for them.
Right.
If they bought a miner at $8,000 and they have not broken even yet, and now their cost to run it isn't very good, well, they're looking at having to break even on two fronts: their capital expenditures and their operational expense ongoing. So like they're kind of getting the shaft from two sides. But for those of us who are saying, well, hey, their $8,000 miner is now a $300 miner for me because I'm buying it secondhand, and I'm swooping in on the fire sale as they're liquidating everything. And maybe I don't need the whole fleet. Maybe I only need 10 of them. But maybe I have 10 friends that need 10 of them. Right? Like now we're closer to buying up their whole fleet. Now we have negotiating power. Now their $8,000 miner that was $300 for me is now $250. You see where I'm going with this, right? Like this kind of stuff, this cycle can rinse and repeat a couple of times for mining gear. I've seen some Bitmain Antminer S9s change hands multiple times in the period of only a few months here.
Yeah, well, so that whole being profitable and not being profitable, that's seasonal, and it's not permanent some places sometimes. And so there's a lot of people invest in it being more permanent than others. How do you kind of go about trying to see if it's like measuring the foresight, right? Like hindsight's 20/20. When somebody comes to you about mining, is there any way that you can kind of perceive if it'll be more profitable long term, or if they'll run into any hiccups along the way?
I can't pretend to have that crystal ball, man. That's the thing. It's like TA, right? Like it's only good for what it's good for. Somebody tells you that they know what the market's going to do 6 months from now, run, right? Like don't even talk to that person. Don't even be polite anymore. Just turn around and run.
So even in the mining world, it is a very volatile industry.
It is. But when it comes to taking a very business-oriented approach, like basically measuring your risks, like understanding what the risk reward is on some level, there are tools for that. But to simplify it as much as I can, learn how to create really good data flows in spreadsheets. Excel is your friend. Like figure out what all the factors are and then start adjusting them. These are complex systems, but they're not completely unknowable. It's just they're only knowable to a certain extent. Like you get past a certain period, like say a quarter or two, and I'm sorry, that's the point at which like most people's crystal ball kind of breaks down. The crystal ball turns into a magic 8-ball instead.
Magic 8-ball. Oh man. So what are your thoughts right now moving forward? Like where do you see yourself and MineYour.Biz? What's the roadmap for you, my man?
Well, I'm glad you asked.
Personal white paper.
Well, I mean, I'm living it right now. Like that's we're really fortunate to be in a space, right, where people are asking you to show up to events. Like, could you have imagined this 3 years ago?
No,
right?
I could not. Blessed.
So, and I feel very similarly blessed in the mining space, right? To have people calling me up like, hey, from my interests, like here's our inventory, here's what we're looking at, here's our earnings, etc. Let's give you a tour of the actual mining facilities. Now let's talk about how we optimize, improve, and how we pivot this quarter. I couldn't have imagined this 3 years ago. That said, I was doing what I loved at that point too. It was just for it was for the big guys. It was for the Fortune 50s. It was for these guys that we talked about before who are consolidating power. And I like to say that I've used my corporate training powers for good now. So personal white paper for me is continue to do this consulting, but also I have some of my own projects in the works that are related to proof of work mining, but they're not. Rather, I should say they're aligned with proof of work mining, but some of them are not a one-to-one related effort. So I'll have public announcements for that soon.
Stay busy,
But
man.
you have to in this side of the space, because I mean, like, we're doing the Wizard of Oz routine, right? We're just a man behind a curtain making blockchain work by by creating little machines that solve these problems.
Magic internet money machines. It sounds so sci-fi, but it's right now in the present. Like I always feel like I'm living in the future. As long as you know what's going on around you, you feel like you are living in the future. People are like, oh, when this, when that. I'm like, well, it is happening. But I wanted to see about like the regulation side, because like being a trader, being an exchange, doing things, is there any like regulations miners have to worry about, like locally or federally or anything like that, like when setting up a mining operation? Or is there any kind of red tape you have to go through, or can you just like set it up and become a miner? Do you have the LLC? How's taxes and stuff like that kind of work out? I was just curious about like the legality side of mining, because I never really got into that, and I'm sure people that are like watching this may be interested in mining. That one thing that's keeping them away is the what if, I get in trouble side, or what are the rules I don't know I could be breaking. So like, what does some of that look like on the other end?
Right. So first off, let me answer that question with the big, bold red neon disclaimer. I am not a CPA, and if you're wondering how to answer these questions for your own capital interests, first off, find a CPA, and then make sure that they don't run screaming when you say that you're getting involved in crypto, because a lot of them will. Today, still, a lot of CPAs will just say, you're doing crypto, I can't help you. If they say that, just thank them for the time and move on to the next. Try to find somebody that can do it. There are a lot of people in this space, because there's not a lot of legal precedent, who are just saying, we can't, we don't know where all this is headed. So if we give you retain our counsel and we give you advice, we might be wrong. Sure. Because we don't have enough legal precedent on the records to just tell you, oh yeah, well in such and such case it definitely went in their favor, or they discovered that they were just fine even though they were doing things this way. So I would say just know that. Take anything that I say right now with a grain of salt, and with the disclaimer that I'm not giving anybody advice. If you haven't retained my counsel as a consultant, then I'm not going to stand behind this when you say, but Seth said. So just throwing that out there. But what I would say is, for anybody who's involved in crypto at all, in the United States, another qualifier there, in the United States, you might want to look into forming your own corporation. An LLC is a great way to start, because it is a pass-through tax, right? It's taxed as a pass-through entity. So you can kind of use a lot of flexibility in how you approach your business, but then still have the veil of professionality and business in front of what you do. Whether you're trading or mining or whatever, I would strongly recommend that anybody who's serious about crypto look at forming a corporation and really investigate whether or not an LLC is right for you. So I would start there. Really, before we even go into next quarter, before we get into 2019, do yourself a favor. In most states, I mean, it's a couple $100 to form an LLC. It doesn't really cost much. Give yourself a Chinese New Year gift. Form a company.
I think I'm gonna have to take your advice on that. I've had multiple people tell me to LLC myself as a consultant, and I'm kind of just like doing it for fun on this, like, whatever. But you're right. I need that professional business side weight behind it for like the whole taxing thing and everything coming up. And it is definitely inexpensive and worth doing for sure. And that's kind of why I brought it up, because I feel like even having a small mining operation, if you are making it a business and that's your expectation of it, then treat it like one and make it a business and LLC it and go through the proper channels. But then again, my anarchist me just wants to be like, do whatever the hell you want, man. Like, if you don't have the money to create the LLC and do the right shit, then just do what you can to earn that and then do it. Make that your first business expense to become a business.
No, that's a smart approach for sure. And consider also that when you're operating at a certain level, you don't really present a big attack surface for the IRS or for the SEC or whatever else. Again, this is not my official advice, but just saying.
Yeah, this is like crypto lemonade stands, in my opinion. I mean, I'm not a friggin' tax person. I mean, I feel like if any judge watched this and people were taking legal advice from it, he would be like, yeah, your fault. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's not like I'm sitting here trying to perpetuate myself as a lawyer or anybody that may understand the law. I'm just saying I don't recognize it. I'm just
saying, but 15 years from now, when you run for president of Kekistan, the first crypto-fueled island in the Bahamas, people are going to investigate what you said on YouTube today. Yeah, it's just dumb.
Yeah, you're right. They're gonna make sure they vote me in though. This is the one that gets me elected. So
Yeah,
what's your
right.
elevator pitch for? Oh, I already did that in the beginning. That's usually my thing at the end.
Oh,
Damn, I ruined my exit. All right, so no, well, I guess for like cryptocurrencies and stuff though, and mining aside, do you do anything else to kind of hedge against the proof of work side? Do you stake any coins? Do you participate in any master nodes or anything like, or is it just mining for you right now?
so for me right now, my participation in crypto is very much oriented towards mining, and I think that it's totally fine to be staking and to use masternode coins. There are some great masternode projects out there, and then there are a lot of also rans, right? And it's going to be really hard to sift through that if you're locking up that collateral in a masternode. Um, when the crap hits the fan, and some of those projects that are also ran say, "Oh, by the way, we're essentially chain dead. You're one of only 5 people holding a masternode that's holding our network together." When you get rid of that collateral at that point, there's a high likelihood of you absolutely losing your shirt, getting wrecked on some of those masternodes. So masternodes are great until masternodes go wrong, in which case, as you try to liquidate your holdings, it's really tricky. I like mining because you can be as agile as possible from all angles. If you want to mine something and then flip that into collateral for a masternode, feel free. But I'm invested in mining, and as evidenced by the fact that I'm on site with clients and working with clients who want to do mining. And from a business perspective, we've got several different ways to justify the business. Like if everything, heaven forbid, an EMP goes off, right, and destroys everything we know. It goes out, EMP goes off over every single mining facility around the world simultaneously, coordinated attack, blockchain is dead. Not going to happen. But let's just say this happens.
Solar flares.
Yeah, right. I think we've got bigger concerns than our blockchain with a solar flare, right? It's like, hey, how's the SPF of your sunblock? It's like 1 million SPF. But like as far as everything shuts down simultaneously. This business then says like, oh, hey, no problem. Apropos of our business plan, we were going to amortize this hardware purchase over, X months anyway. We're in the clear. Or we bought insurance on Y number of machines. Or we already had a plan to slough off assets after X number of months. We're already at rotation. We're already moving these out of our inventory and moving on to the next. So if you're looking at mining, even as like a small to mid-scale miner, absolutely think kind of like a big business and ask yourself what is the long-term prospect here, not just in crypto, but what am I doing with these real assets? And that's why I'm so heavily involved in mining, because you have that degree of flexibility. Not because I don't have faith in blockchain. I'm long on blockchain. I'm just short on a lot of the also ran cryptos right now, because it's hard to tell during this ongoing kind of sideways market. It's hard to tell who's going to be able to weather that storm, especially the ICOs, right? Who's just watching their ETH investments dwindle and be unable to pay some of their developers.
Yeah, or their overhead. It is gonna be interesting to watch. That's what I've been trying to educate people on, like with the ICOs and stuff. Like, what do you think they're doing with all the F you invested in them? They're selling it. They're cashing out. They're dumping on you. That's their business model. How do you miss that?
Yeah. So to answer your question, for me, I'm bullish on blockchain. I'm bullish on mining because the vast majority of projects are powered by proof of work. That requires miners. That requires sharp business people running mining operations ongoing. So if somebody else is folding, somebody new will step in.
Yeah, is that people are folding right now. That's exactly it. Like, hey, you watching? Are you calling their bluff? Are you picking up their fold? Where can they get in touch with you if they decide to get into the mining game, man? If there people are watching and they're just like, hey, how do I get in touch with this guy? Where is he? Where can they get in touch with you, the business? Just shout yourselves out. The links will be in the description box below for everybody watching. So go ahead and check out the links in the description box. But go ahead and let them know for the podcast side, like where they can find you.
Yeah, for sure. If you want to chat with me directly, I'm on Twitter at I'm cleverly hidden under the username Seth Estrada. And then
same thing with the real name thing. It's like cleverly hidden.
Yeah, right. And then on Discord, I'm on the MineYour.Biz Discord server, and frankly, I live there a lot more than I'm on YouTube or BitTube. So I would say if you want to get in touch, that's the fastest way.
All right, guys, check it out, man. I appreciate your time, dude. I know, again, you're at work. You're, like, in the middle of working with clients, setting up mining operations. I appreciate your time to come on the show and kind of educate the people about, like, what mining is, how it does, how they can get into it, the importance of it, and things of it. Like, we even covered, like, you know, versus the proof of stake aspect and, you know, the perpetual energy, you know, situation that proof work may come into. Yeah, I feel like this was a really good overall conversation for people to kind of dip their toes into mining. So, you know, again, thank you, and I appreciate it. Guys, if you like this video, go ahead and pound that thumbs up button. Don't forget to click subscribe and flick the alert bell. It's right next to subscribe. You'll get a notification every time I go live. I'm doing a 1-hour podcast called Streaming with Strangers, like, every day. So if you would like to come on the podcast, there's a link on Twitter. Go ahead and check it out. It's also in the description box below. Calendarly, you can schedule your time to come on and just, you know, talk about whatever. All right, guys, thank you and have a day. Shout out to Satoshi's Ball by JarsLearnCrypto.com in Ottawa, December 15th. Monarch token and Monarch wallet, Stroken Tokens.com, Bitcoin Energy, and Bitbacker.io. Shout out to Satoshi's Ball by JarsLearnCrypto.com in Ottawa, December 15th. Monarch token and Monarch wallet, Stroken Tokens.com, Bitcoin Energy, and Bitbacker.io. Shout out to Satoshi's Ball by JarsLearnCrypto.com in Ottawa, December 15th. Monarch token and Monarch wallet, Stroken Tokens.com, Bitcoin Energy, and Bitbacker.io.